So today we continue our spring journey that we're calling Renewing, which is just a deeper dive, a journey of sorts to experience this healing power that Jesus Christ wants to work in each and every single one of our lives. And like I mentioned last week, I'm just going to reiterate what we do not mean by this healing. First and foremost, the healing is not like one day I'm going to come out with the snakes and everyone's going to come forward and we're going to miraculously cure you of all your physical ailments. Right? Although Jesus does do physical, miraculous cures, and that's an amazing and beautiful thing, I can't guarantee that for anybody. The second thing then is by healing doesn't mean that Jesus is going to fix us. He's not going to fix things in our lives so that we can then enjoy our lives without him. That's typically what we want. We want God to be this little genie in a bottle, and we'd go to Jesus and ask him, Jesus, I'm really having a tough time at work. Help me, make some more money. And then all of a sudden we get a raise and we go, thanks, God. Or we don't get a raise and we go, God hates me. Right? This is also not what this healing or God intervening in our lives, that's not what it is. Right? God doesn't fix our lives so that then we can go live our lives like we've always wanted. That's not anything. Again, remember, what's the goal of our life? The goal is not, Jesus' goal for us is not what we call the prosperity gospel. Jesus isn't trying to get us to be happy and wealthy and wise or something. That is nothing Jesus ever promises to anybody. But what he does promise is that in the midst of whatever we go through in life, the good times and the bad, sickness and in health, right, everything that we go through in life, he promises that there will be something to allow us to continue to live and to fulfill our goal. Our goal being, very simply, to love and to be loved. That's why Jesus gives us that greatest commandment, to love God above all things and to love your neighbor as yourself. That's the goal, is to be able to love and to be loved as we've been created to do that. That's why the simple definition of healing is really just as simple as that. To be set free in what? In order to love as we've been created and called to love, and then to receive love, to be loved as we've been created and called to receive love. It's as simple as that. But there's so many layers. The example I used last week then was St. Mark Ji Tianjiang, right? Mark, he never was cured. He was never fixed of the disease that ailed him. And yet, in the midst of the sufferings that he went through, he was able to fulfill his vocation to love and to be loved. And Mark, what's also very beautiful about his life and the lives of all the saints is we recognize just they had a different quality of life. They had a qualitatively different experience than I had. They weren't on something, but they were on something. Their life was, they experienced life different than we do. They experienced life very much like we hear about in the Gospels, where even in the midst of their poverty or their sickness or whatever there was, the circumstances that were in their lives, they experienced a blessed life. Their life was truly blessed. And that's a different quality of life. When was the last time I nerded out on you? Okay, we're going to nerd out for just 1 minute. It's on your handout too, but that word blessed, okay, just that simple word blessed, the ancient Greek word, the original Greek word that Jesus uses is makarios. Okay, makarios in the ancient Greek literature, if you were going to use the word makarios, you would use it to describe the life of the gods. The gods were makarios. They had a blessed life. Why? Because they're gods. They get to do whatever they want. They don't have to deal with all the things that us humans have to deal with. Their lives are great. Makarios then would also be used to refer to people that were very high to do in society, very wealthy. They had everything they needed to eat. They had all the social status in the world. Just their lives were blessed. Yeah, man, it must be nice to be them. Makarios, so great. Okay, that's what makarios is. But then how does Jesus use it? Very first one, blessed are you, makarios are the poor. What? That's what everyone would have said. What? That's not how that word works, Jesus. No, Jesus is radically redefining it. And he's really trying to point us to the much deeper meaning that true makarios, this true blessedness, a truly divine life, it's not exactly what we think it is or what we assume that it is. And that's what Jesus is going to offer us healing for. Jesus wants to heal us so that we can experience that kind of life, that qualitatively different kind of life, this blessed life that all the saints we hear about experience in the midst of all of the challenges that they face. So today, we just want to dig into that. And then the simple question for today is this. Okay, if Jesus isn't necessarily going to fix me, If he's not going to cure me of cancer or fix my diabetes or overcome my career hurdles, if he's not going to fix everything in my life so that I can have a blessed life, like I assume it is, like most people assume a blessed life is, money and fame and whatever. If that's off the table, what's he going to do then? So it's like, well, what's left? That was kind of my goal there, Father. What else are we going to get here out of life? If we still have to endure sufferings, that's not even going to go away. What's the healing even of? What's the point? Like, what are we talking about here? So we'll dig into that. Have you ever seen the movie Good Will Hunting? Oh my goodness. Okay, so thank you for some of you. Also, quit reading books, everybody. Go watch a movie. Good Will Hunting is a fantastic movie. It was nominated for an Academy Award. Robin Williams, Matt Damon, beautiful movie, great movie. But it's about this young man played by Matt Damon, Will Hunting. Will is just this genius level kid, just genius intellect. But because of his very troubled past, he's ended up he works as a janitor at MIT up there in Boston. And then he just kind of does his job, and then he goes and parties with his friends. Like, that's his life. It's like, he's a good American, right? I'm going to go do my job and work hard, and then I'm just going to go enjoy my life when I'm not working. Okay, very common story there. But eventually, as the movie goes on, he gets in trouble with the law, and he's eventually ordered, his sentence is he has to go see a court-ordered psychologist who's played by Robin Williams. That'd be Sean. Sean McGuire is that guy. Throughout the movie, though, what we discover is that this brilliant kid, right, this brilliant kid, his past, his history, seriously continues to affect his day-to-day life. He's deeply wounded, right, literally by past abuse that he's gone through from his foster father, but then just so much else that he's had to deal with in his life. And because of his past, because of what he's gone through, what he now deals with is just this inability to make real, authentic connections with other human beings. Right? He's the smart guy in the group. He's the funny guy in the group. But to make these real, deep, authentic connections, that's very difficult for him. Why? Because it's also difficult for him to be vulnerable with anybody. And then that also plays out I'm just going to spoil it all like I always do. Even when he has a wonderful girlfriend in his life, it all falls apart. Why? Because he can't make a serious, real, deep connection with her, and he can't be vulnerable with her. His past, his history, continues to affect him. And that's really, as him and Sean, his psychologist, as they begin to develop their relationship, this is really what they really dig into, is how Will he tries to deal with everything now without ever having addressed what had happened to him before. There's this very powerful scene then where Sean, he's looking through Will's court file, which is pretty extensive. It has everything. It tells his story, the story of his life, just the story of the brokenness of his life. Where, yeah, sure, it has all of the petty crimes that he committed when he was a teenager or something. But then it has the files of when his foster father was brought up on charges of abuse. It has the photos of Will when he was going through all that. And Sean then opens up to Will about how he went through something very similar in his childhood as well. But then, and this is the powerful part of the scene, he turns to him and he says, Will, I don't know a lot, but see this, and he holds up the file for him. He says, Will, I don't know a lot, but you see this. This is not your fault. And Will, again, he's a South Boston kid. He plays it off. He's just like, oh yeah, I know. And Sean, he says, no, I don't think you heard me. This is not your fault. And again, Will's a tough kid. He's like, I know. But then just over and over, Sean just keeps saying that it's not your fault. And Will, he moves from this tough guy attitude to just like anger and defensiveness, all the way just into pure acceptance. And he ends up, crying at the end of this scene. But what he discovers, and for the first time, what he truly just embodies, and he finally recognizes and realizes in truth for the very first time, is that it's true. All of this stuff that he went through as a child, and now all the fallout that he has to deal with from all that, it wasn't his fault. It's now his problem, but it was never his fault. He didn't deserve that as a kid. He didn't it's not his fault. But that is his past. And by beginning to deal with his past, that's when Will truly begins to experience healing in his life. Okay. For us, each one of us, we all have a past. I don't know if you knew that. We all do. For some of you, and I know for some of you, your story is not too different from Will's. But for each and every single one of us, For those of us that can't identify with that, each and every single one of us, this is what our faith teaches us, each and every one of us has a past that seriously affects us to this day. And each one of us has this abusive foster father in our past that now we have to deal with in our day-to-day lives today. Do you know why I know that? You ever heard the story of Adam and Eve? It's not just a kid's story. Okay. The story of Adam and Eve, that's what that story is getting at. The deep truth revealed there at the very beginning of the Bible is that each and every single one of us has a past that we share. Are you a human being? You're a human, so we all share it. Okay, all of us share this common past that still affects us to this day. The story there in the garden, yeah, we all know the story. There's the serpent, there's the devil. He's tempting Eve to take this fruit, whatever. But that's kind of where we leave it, because it's a kid's story, right? Just kids. Don't be disobedient to your parents. Don't listen to what the devil says. Yeah, but the deeper truth of that story is that the devil leads Eve into a deception. He just simply lies to her. And the lie goes something like this. You know that guy that told you can't eat that fruit of that tree? He's really holding out on you. Tells you can't eat that. You should be able to do whatever you want, right? Yeah. That guy, he says he's good. He's not good. He's not good at all. He just wants you to think that he is. He leads Eve into this deception that he's not a good father and you can't trust him. He's holding out on you. And if you would just do whatever you wanted, man, your life would be so much better. That's the deception, and that leads Adam and Eve just into open rebellion. That simple little lie. But then, as they say, the rest is history. But it's not just the history. That's now our history. The deep truth revealed in Scriptures is that we now take that on. We now have to deal with that. That's the story of each and every single human person. And because of the fallout from that, we all suffer from it. In that moment, the deep truth is that Adam and Eve sold us out. They sold us into captivity. The image you could use is they took us from the house of a good father and they said, we're all moving. And they moved us into the house of an abusive foster father. That's the dumbed down version of the doctrine of original sin for you. Okay, this is what we've believed for a long, long time. The reason that we deal with so much is because that's our history. And our foster father, he continues to deceive us. He continues to work on us. And he continues to try to convince us that all of the stuff that we deal with today, it's all our fault. The good news of the gospel, the dumbed down version is that scene from Good Will Hunting. It's not your fault. It's not your fault. The problem is that for most of us, when we hear that, we have the same response as Will. We go, yeah, I know. It was the devil's fault. I knew it. We take that, and again, we can chuckle at that. It's like, oh yeah, it's not my fault. I get it. But that's the issue then. We know it's not our fault, but we don't know it. Because the way that we continue to live and to operate, because of what's in our past, it continues to affect us this day. Even if we can acknowledge it and say, yeah, it's not my fault, like it still affects us. And it still changes the way that we live and operate. It still affects the way that we think and the way that we interact with anyone. That we've internalized then the lie. We've internalized this lie that God's not a good father. Again, if I gave you the test, you would all say, God is a good father, A+ father, thank you. Again, I know that you know, we all know, but deep down we don't. Do you know how I know this? I'm going to prove it to you. Ready? All right. Have you ever prayed to God for something and then he didn't give it to you and then you were mad at God? Just me? Okay. No, I'm sure we've all done that at some point. Right? Oh man, God didn't give it to me. He must hate me. Okay, this is that lie. It manifests itself in much deeper ways, but this is just the simple way. Right? All of us have been able to say, oh, God must be holding out on me. He didn't do what I asked him to do. Some part of us still believes this lie that God is not good. The simple truth, the very, very simple truth, is that our Father, the Father revealed to us in and through Jesus Christ, God the Father is indeed very good. He's a good Father. The problem is we don't actually believe that at times, and most of the time. You remember that story Jesus tells the prodigal son? Very famous story. Everyone knows the prodigal son because the prodigal son's the rebel. The story is better, the parable is better labeled the story of the father with two sons. We all focus on the rebel son because we're just like, oh, look at that bad kid. Drugs, sex, and rock and roll. That's what that kid went off to. But then what happens with the other son? We always forget about him. The other son is the obedient son that stays at home. He does everything his dad asked him to do. He's a good little kid. But what do we discover towards the end of the story about him? Is that he resents his father. He thinks his dad's been holding out on him. He's like, you threw a party for my brother, you never threw one for me. He thinks he's getting held out on. So the story, the parable Jesus tells, the deeper truth is that both sons, both of them, even though it looks different for them, both sons have believed a lie about their father. Ultimately, God the Father. And that's that. He's holding out on me. If I could just go do whatever I wanted, I could go have fun, I could live my life, I'd be happier. He's holding out on me. He's not good. But that's not how God is. That's not what Jesus reveals to us. That's not what all of history reveals to us. No, he's not hovering over us, trying to kill our fun. He's not holding out on us. He's simply trying to give us everything. That's what the Father says in the story. Everything that I have is yours. Everything that I have is yours. It's always been yours. This Makarios, this blessed life, we don't have to earn it. We don't have to convince God, who's angry and vindictive, to try to give it. No, it's ours. It's always been ours, but we, in different ways, start to run away from that because we believe this lie that he's not good and that we're not his beloved sons and daughters. Okay, here's the point. Then the healing, like the fundamental healing that each and every single one of us needs, the primary healing that Jesus comes to offer us and to restore within us is that healing then of our identity as his beloved sons and as his beloved daughters. Jesus comes to reveal to us and to heal and to renew that identity we have as his beloved sons and daughters. When Jesus comes, he gives that simple truth, like he's going to say it a little later in the gospel. It's your good Father's pleasure to give you the kingdom. He wants to give you Makarios. Stop running away from it. Just allow him to do that. That's the healing that we need, is that identity where we've forgotten or we've been deceived into never believing it, that we truly are his beloved sons and daughters and that he gives us everything. So as we continue in these weeks, the bulk of what we're going to be doing is just digging into the many ways that we continue to live the lie. We continue to live as if we're not his beloved sons and daughters. And that shows up in very explicit ways, very easy ways to identify, but also then very subtle ways that you may not even recognize right now. And we're going to dig into them to the point where we'll be able to recognize and to see those have been the lies we've been operating in and out of, and the true healing will come when we recognize and embody our status as beloved sons and daughters. But for today, right, just simply stay with that this Makarios, true Makarios, this truly blessed life, it comes as a free gift from our good Father. The healing that we need is all of the ways that we run away from that. And that's what God seeks to give to us, is a healing in those places that prevent us from receiving his love, from receiving the good life, the blessedness that he's trying to bestow upon us.